The truth behind many of the misunderstandings about the Dermaroller by White Lotus, the skin needling specialists. Dermarollers contain tiny needles that cause microtrauma below the surface of the skin to increase the body's own natural collagen induction and absorption of product.
Correct needle length actually depends a lot on what you want to achieve. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to microneedling or dermarollering. For some conditions, longer needles are necessary, for some, shorter are necessary. As you can see, if you only actually want to increase transdermal absorption or absorption of products through the skin, you can use very, very short needles which just penetrate the very surface level of the skin, and all they will achieve is actually to increase absorption. They won't be long enough to actually induct collagen. These are commonly referred to as home use rollers by many companies. In actual fact, if you are planning to induct collagen in the skin, you need to reach the deeper dermis levels of the skin. And the smallest microneedle that will actually achieve that is a 0.5mm microneedle, and this can be seen pictured on the chart. Interestingly enough, the 0.5mm microneedles are actually the best also at increasing transdermal absorption. They are in fact better than the shorter home use rollers of 0.15, 0.2 and 0.3 microneedles. They're also more effective than the 1.5mm microneedles. And this sounds a little bit unusual considering the longer needles you would expect to increase absorption through the skin more effectively, but it appears when they do research that the 0.5mm actually delivers the substances, creams or serums to the exact right length for them to enter the microcapillaries and therefore be absorbed more quickly. In actual fact, when you're performing cosmetic treatments on the face, the ideal needle length is usually the 0.5mm or at very longest the 0.75mm. Now what's been interesting is when they've actually done research using a 1.5mm roller on the skin, they've actually done skin punch biopsies afterwards. What they've discovered is that the collagen induction only takes place to a maximum depth of 0.5 to 0.6mm. So in a lot of cases, when you're using 1.5mm rollers and longer, you may in fact go past the point where you're actually inducting more collagen and may in fact be causing a lot of unnecessary tissue damage. There are in fact times when it's really useful to be able to use a 1.5 or 2mm roller, and these cases are usually where you've got severe scarring or in some cases stretch marks, where you've got a lot of knotted bundles of collagen fibre on the surface of the skin, and you actually need the longer needle length to actually pass through these to the deeper levels of the skin to simulate collagen. But you don't need it for general cosmetic treatments across the board. It's mainly just where you have this thick scar tissue, and often these are actually burn scars or more medical based conditions rather than just purely cosmetic. When using a 0.5mm and even up to a 0.75mm dermaroller, if you use good technique, then you in fact don't generally need to use topical anaesthetic, and you can actually perform the treatment quite painlessly. Now it can be a bit prickly and so forth, but in actual fact the client will very rarely say they actually experience pain from the treatment, or you at home will very rarely experience pain from using those ones. Topical anaesthetics are generally a very safe drug and there's not too much problem, but what's not often considered is that when you use them with the Dermaroller, you actually dramatically increase your absorption of those products directly into the bloodstream. In fact, some studies they've done have actually shown that you can increase the absorption of a product by up to 1,000 times. So in this particular case, even if there's the smallest risk, if the product's unnecessary, I just suggest you don't use it. If you find you do need to use it, that's okay, but I strongly suggest learn the good techniques, and then once you actually use that correctly with a good needle length, you'll find that generally it's quite unnecessary. White Lotus has long suggested that dermarollers can in fact be painless to use. In actual fact, when we've surveyed students who've learnt our techniques in our courses, they've come back that 93% of them now find the skin needling treatments quite painless, even on their first use. So we actually had a look, when you actually examine the research that's out there, there's also some research now starting to support this. Quite recently there was a scientific trial done using microneedles of just around 0.5mm in length, and what they actually used is a rather rough insertion technique using an actual stamp rather than a roller, so it would have actually been rougher on the person. And despite this, what they actually found is the pain reception of these people was only 1/20th that of a hypodermic syringe. So as you can see, that's a dramatically smaller amount of pain than perhaps you would expect from anything that involved needles. In most people's cases, that can be perceived as completely painless when a treatment is done properly. What's also been interesting recently is when they've started studying pain perception and whether a treatment is painful using skin needling, as well as studying the length of needles, they've actually also studied the thickness of needles. Now, the longer needle you use, of course, as you'd expect, the treatment can become more painful, and that's why when you get up to sort of using 1.5 or 2 millimeter, usually done in a clinical environment, and you do need some form of anaesthetic. But what they also studied is the width of needles. Now, for a long time, White Lotus has been suggesting that in actual fact, thicker needles are better. And the reason we've always said this is because basically they're more durable, less likely to become blunt, bent or damaged. And if you actually have a blunt needle or even a bent needle that's sort of hooked over in that sort of shape, what actually happens is when you're rolling across the skin, it sort of catches. It feels like it's not rolling smoothly. And at that point, you get a lot more pain for the person because you have to go more slowly and actually tears the skin. And it doesn't actually improve the results. It's actually a very, very bad thing to actually be happening. So when they've actually done these scientific trials, very interesting, they've shown that in actual fact, people can't tell the difference between up to a 0.3 gauge thickness of needle down to a very thin 0.15 gauge needle. Now, you see a lot of advertising saying thinner needle, 0.15, it'll be less painful. In actual fact, the opposite is usually true because the thicker needle is more likely to hold its point, always be sharp, and the sharper the needle, the better it works and the less painful the experience is. When you start to look at the serums that you use during treatment and also the aftercare serums and so forth that you use with derma rollers, there's three major things you actually have to look at and consider. Now, the first one is how they enhance the treatment. You need a serum or a cream that actually works to enhance the effects of the derma roller so you get better results in the long run. The second thing you need to look at is how well they reduce the side effects caused by the derma roller. There are a couple of major side effects caused by the derma roller. One of them is redness of the skin. The other one is dryness, of course, because you've punctured the external layers of the skin and therefore you lose a little bit of moisture afterwards. And the third one is photosensitivity, or a bit of sensitivity to sunlight. So you need to look at a serum where possible, which is actually going to reduce those side effects. Now, the third one you need to consider, which is something a lot of people don't sort of talk about and often isn't mentioned, is the safety. Now, derma rollers dramatically increase transdermal absorption through the skin. Like some studies have shown that some forms of skin needling can increase absorption through the skin by up to 1,000 times. So this is a massive increase in the absorption of what would normally go through your skin. Not only that, but some substances that aren't normally absorbed through your skin can in fact be absorbed. So what you need to look at is a product that enhances the results, but is going to be very, very safe if it enters directly into your bloodstream, which is what it is going to do. Some products that are advertised to be used with the derma roller or skin needling can in fact increase the side effects we just mentioned, but also in some cases, some of them can actually present very real health risks, and it's often not commented upon, so I'd just like to talk about this just very briefly. The most common product used as aftercare is often the retinol, a vitamin A product. Now, vitamin A isn't a very good beauty product in its own right. The problem with vitamin A when used with the derma roller treatments is the main side effects of vitamin A are in fact red and dry skin and photosensitivity. So you combine it with the red, dry skin and photosensitivity caused by the derma roller and you get very red, very dry and very, very sensitive to sunlight. And this can actually mean that even when you're using shorter needles, rather than having a recovery time of say 24, 48 hours, you can actually stretch that recovery time to 6 to 8 weeks in some cases. So in fact, that's not acceptable to most people. So the vitamin A is not always the best thing to use in those cases. What's really interesting too is in actual fact there is no study showing that vitamin A or retinol products used with the derma roller in fact enhance the effects of derma roller treatment. In actual fact, two of the best studies ever done actually didn't use vitamin A at all and showed just how much collagen induction can take place without the use of these multivitamins at all. In one of them, they actually showed that you can increase collagen induction by up to 1,000% with an average of about 206% after a single treatment, and that's without the use of vitamin A. So I strongly recommend avoiding that if you possibly can. What's also been happening a lot recently with the derma rollers is a variety of pre-existing beauty creams and products that are normally applied to the skin are using the derma rollers now to enhance the delivery of the creams and serums. They're enhancing the absorption and therefore absorbing straight into the systematic or the blood circulation, you know what I mean, in the area. Now, that's good if a product has proven anti-aging benefits, then it's good, of course, to enhance that in that area. But what is taking place quite often is that products that are not considered safe to be taken internally are actually being used on the skin with the derma rollers and actually increasing their absorption dramatically. And I think in the long run that contains certain risks. A really good example of this recently has been some of the epidermal growth factors that have been used. Now, some of these are very good to be used on the skin because they encourage cell division, which of course increases collagen in the area, increases the growth of collagen in that particular area. But they're not considered safe to be taken orally or taken internally, because what can happen is they can also, if there's cancerous or malignant cells in the area, they can also increase the growth of these particular substances. But what's going on is when you're actually using these substances on the skin with the derma roller, they're going straight into the bloodstream. So I think in the long run that's going to present a lot of potential risks. And this is just one example, so I suggest anyone using derma rollers at home or even in clinic, be quite careful with the products you're using on the skin. Keep in mind this is not just during the treatment or straight afterwards, but the increase in transdermal absorption afterwards has been shown to last for around 8 hours. For the 8 hours after a treatment, just be very careful what you use on your skin. Probably, where possible, limit it to very safe natural ingredients. Do your treatment later in the day or at night, and then basically you can start your normal beauty regime the next morning. In actual fact, there are a range of natural serums that can actually be used as a substitute for many of these synthetic ingredients. In our organic serums that we actually use in clinic, two of the key ingredients we use a lot of are actually ginseng and green tea, both very, very natural substances, both safe for oral consumption, and also in many cases, many of the herbs we use in our products have actually also been proven safe for actually hypodermic injection, so we know they're very, very safe no matter how deeply they're absorbed into the system, and there's also a huge amount of research on them showing just how effective they in fact are. What many people don't realise is the fact that ginseng is in fact one of the most widely researched herbs on earth. When it comes to cosmetic treatments, it's been shown it can actually increase collagen type 1 production when applied topically to the face, and also it has trace amounts of all the microminerals, nutrients and vitamins that you need for perfect wound healing, which will ensure you get the maximum effect from your derma roller treatment. Green tea is absolutely fantastic to be used after the treatment, and we mix a variety of herbs to enhance that effect into the aftercare serum. But the green tea itself has a number of effects which are really useful with skin needling. It has a huge amount of anti-aging effects in itself. In actual fact, when they've done recent studies comparing it to the 21 most popular anti-aging herbs across Europe, it came out number 1 by a long, long way in terms of effectiveness when they actually studied it. It also has been shown to actually be fantastic when you're looking at UV damage and so forth to actually regenerate skin cells. Importantly for our effects, it also has a moisturising effect which counteracts some of the dryness produced by the skin needling, and it's actually also been shown when applied topically to be actually able to reduce UV sensitivity. So when you get, after the skin needling, you of course get that photosensitivity. The green tea to some degree can alleviate that. Now if you're going out in very hot sun in a warm tropical country, you still need to apply sunburn cream. But for most people located across Northern Europe and in colder climates, that's all you're going to need to counteract that small side effect of the derma roller treatments.
Brought to you by White Lotus Anti-Aging Skin Needling Specialists.